Welcome, my friend, to Next Level Change Success. I'm Therese Perez, a change strategist and practitioner with over 20 years of experience designing and delivering impactful change programs across various industries. In this podcast, I share real-world practical strategies to help you create and deliver positive change experiences, whether you're a leader, practitioner, or someone looking to bring new ways of working to life. In today's fast-paced world, change is constant. Here we focus on how you can put people at the centre of your change strategy, because people with a sense of purpose are the most important link in driving performance. So if you're ready to create meaningful change and achieve all the success that comes with it, keep listening. Together, let's change the conversation and take it to the next level. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Next Level Change Success. My name is Therese Perez and I'm the founder of myvirtualchangemanager.com. I'd like to acknowledge that I am recording on Tharawal country and pay my respects to the traditional owners and custodians on the land on which I am recording, and to elders both past, present and emerging. I'm recording this on a Friday, so Fridays are a good day of the week to record episodes, just feel that extra sense of joy at the end of the day. And I wanted to talk about change and choice. And it felt very, very relevant to talk about the mindset of this. I was reflecting about how change, when you're developing your change approach or you're leading change, you want people to feel a sense of choice. Of course, as I mentioned, you can never control how others react to a change. But early on in my career, when rolling out change, I always felt obliged. I need to take care of people, and I felt quite frustrated in the change landscape because I had leaders leading the change who cared less, and I felt like I needed to care more. I would get more involved. I would definitely feel like it was at my expense because I just wanted to make sure everyone was okay. And that can happen a lot in the change sphere, more so with change facilitators and change managers than possibly with change leaders, because oftentimes leaders and leadership, over time, I've worked with really great leaders. In the past, however, I have also worked with leaders who haven't cared as much about their people, who seemed that every single objection was a personal affront to them, who didn't really, on the EQ spectrum or the change intelligence spectrum, haven't really developed into that. Now, my own personal journey really lends into this, and I want to talk to you a little bit about that because it gives good context around why I take this approach. And of course, because in my virtual change manager, we talk a lot about your self-awareness around your belief systems and how that drives your approach to change, and also can either inhibit outcomes. So it could mean that you have quite a frustrating change experience, whether it be trying to get stakeholders on board, whether it be you're influencing for change and you can't get people to really get on board your change and support your change. And I found that in my 20s, as I really started to unpack my own belief systems and what was driving that, which was quite the journey, quite a personal journey, that I came across the concept, and I talked about it in the previous episode. I read the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. However, that had me observe my behaviours more, observe my thoughts more, not attached to them as much. And in the very beginning, that was quite hard. It was hard to really start to build that muscle to sit in that space. That led to meditation and the power of meditation and being able to sit still. And again, I had to really work through my process. I was a big journaler, and so if you journal, if you write, all power to you, keep it going. If you find that you go off the wagon, back on the wagon insofar as needing to get the thoughts out of your mind, then I encourage you, that's okay too, we're human. So I have definitely improved, even over the last couple of years, kind of coming out of that post-COVID world, my journaling and getting back into that in earnest, just so that really if I hit the end of the day and I need to get thoughts out of my head, even if it's a to-do list, I'm writing it down so that my mind can settle. And then meditation, watching my breath really helps, and connecting with that to get present, but also to not be my thoughts as such. That journey into that space had me realize that I'm always at choice. Now, we live in a world where it's very much disempowering our constructs if we allow it to be. And so that whole concept of where people say, wake up, why can't people wake up to being like lemmings, like just following the general kind of thought process, and oftentimes thoughts that come out of people's mouths is more because of social media, because of media. It's not a fact. It's not an experience that many of us are having. As I observe my thoughts, I realized the importance of the power of positive thinking. I read the book from Norman Vincent Peale, and he was all about the power of positive thinking. Now, what I had to unpack there was it's not just endless optimism, which can be quite toxic. It's actually realizing that we, from the time we're young, we're often trained, our minds are trained through experience and our family systems to look at the negative, and starting to recode that into looking at everything has a positive and a negative. And so let's focus on the positive, and being able to reflect to people if they're looking at the downside of a change. I also then say, well, I acknowledge and recognize that they feel that way, and that perhaps they might want to think about sometimes these things have opportunity. And so reframing change as there's always opportunities. I talk to people sometimes if they're heading down a redundancy path and they're sharing their personal emotions with me. Again, I get it. I've been there. I know how terrifying it can be, and because it threatens our base level of existence, it threatens our financial situation. And I say to them, the path leads to better things. It often leads to better things if you allow it. To give them a concept of choice, because I added on, if you allow it. A sense of faith is really great in this space as well, because people then have to trust. I trust that everything will be okay, and part of it is about how they will go that change journey with that sense of faith. So faith is really just a form of positive thinking. It's the thought of something beyond yourself that will support you. And that's also very powerful. So all of these different frames, reframes, there's definitely a lot to learn and apply in that in the change space. I believe that has helped me support other people in a more powerful way because I went through that journey. And what I reflected about work situation, business, etc., is that I create my own reality, and I feel that sense of control. My current circumstances, my current pain points, as well as my current joy points, are because of my mindset. And I believe that should be really focused on as well. These are the things that from a change practitioner perspective that you, or a change facilitator, even a change leader, your personal journey and being able to reflect as I'm having this conversation with you about choice and how do you relate to choice. I go to work and every day I show up out of a space of choice. Now, people in some headspaces, and especially in a negative context, will say, I have to. The reality is you don't have to. But if you didn't, there would be circumstances that you would not find palatable. And so that's why you turn up to work. But you're still at choice because you could still choose the other path. People will default their power base to circumstances outside of their control so that they feel safe. And so they can blame, I guess, sometimes things external to them versus take accountability. And I am all about taking personal accountability. I am absolutely about being able to take my power back. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that my mindset at different times will go to more of a victim state. Oh, this is happening and that's out of my control. The benefit of reading The Power of Now or having that observer state, that third person, the helicopter view, is that as change happens in my sphere, as my circumstances change, not out of something I'm creating, although I'm always creating, right? But not out of something I'm creating, but just these are things that happen, whether organization changes, whether it's responses that people have to my products, training, etc. These things are there for me to learn. And I choose my emotional response. I choose whether I'm going to continue forward or whether I need a break. These are all things of my creation and choice. So if you're working on change, let's start with you. How much do you reflect on and how empowered do you feel currently in your role in the change? How can you grow and develop and do things differently so that not only would it help you grow, but it would also help others grow? And from a change perspective in your change plan, the communication element, is it communicating in a way where there is choice? And that choice is the energy that's there. I want to give an example of an organization transformation I worked on. And I'll give you two different examples of where it was communicated well and where it was communicated not so well. One was where I was working on the change, and what we communicated was, you will need to make a choice at some stage in this journey because this is the vision for the organization. This is where we're headed. And you're always at choice as to whether you want to continue on this journey and if this matters to you and if it lines up with your goals, your vision for your career. Because we want to support people who align with this vision and who want to be here and help others and serve others. And I also respect if you get to a point where you think, maybe this isn't for me. So that's one way you can communicate it. The other way, which I found, which I wasn't working on the change, I was part of the organization which was getting changed, was some people are, let's say, a blue dot and they're aligning to the future of the organization. And then some people are yellow dots and they're not as aligned. So as a leader, you need to have these yellow dot people leave the organization because they're not aligned to the vision. Now, see the two different views of the world. Now, I had thought when the commencement of the blue dot conversation happened, because I was so horrified that was a message that was being given, because I knew from my prior experience that actually people will gravitate naturally away from an organization which is changing if it doesn't align to their value system. They will struggle and they won't necessarily start to show the behaviors that you want. Now, that could be a positive or a negative thing, but when that communication happened, I just thought, I can't believe this is being communicated to people leaders around get rid of the yellows. Because I had seen people, if you think about the law of attraction, which was another thing that we talked about, which is basically like attracts like. And you can have diversity in that. It's more like your value system, your vision, like what you can attract and manifest within your world, which I absolutely subscribe to. People will gravitate towards you or gravitate away. So if you bring in new people into an organization, typically new leaders, it will see a natural attrition happen of people who essentially aren't vibrating at the same vision, and it causes tension, and oftentimes people tap out and opt out if they're the yellow person and they don't necessarily start to align or blend to the blue vision, for example. But rather than that communication of saying, look, as leaders, the main thing for you to do is hold the vision and to respect everyone through this journey. And then as you might find that yellow people will start to move towards your vision. And so therefore they'll turn blue. And it's kind of a little bit important just to keep saying that this isn't just about colors or whatever. It's just about even the people when you walk into an organization who might have been branded a certain troublemaker or not a great person, or they're not really aligned with where we're headed, can actually shift their perspective if they're engaged at a heart level and around the vision. They just might have been in an environment that was so toxic that the worst of them came out. And we often reflect our environments, right? So if you put a different leader in play, you could have just a total turnaround in performance with very minimal people changes. But the word, when communicated and definitely interpreted, because it certainly arced up a lot of people and actually had a lot of really great people leave the organisation who had the right intent and who were just looking for some good leadership to enable good things to happen, but the communication was, if someone's showing the signs of being yellow, get rid of them. Just shocking, really, in this day and age. But it showed a level of self-awareness which was very, very low. Certainly no change intelligence in that conversation. And also because it robbed the people of choices, and also didn't communicate to leaders that they should be facilitating that concept of choice to enable people to change, to step change, to get on board. Sometimes it takes people a little bit longer. Sometimes people do not ever get there, and that's okay too. So I hope those two examples, one where a leader clearly articulates this is the vision, I want to work with you all around conversations around whether this works for you, whether it's something we can line up with your development pathway, and here's a couple of expectations, totally different conversation and different outcome because you're emphasizing choice. Now, I'm not saying that there's a choice as to whether I want that change to happen. The definitive and certainty is this change is happening, and I understand where you're at around the response to the change. And I just want to also reflect for you and for everyone, this can be a choice as to whether to be here or not. And I respect the choices, and we can have conversations about whether it's for you, and we'll have those conversations one-on-one. That is a more empowering conversation for people where they're being respected in that process, versus I'm going to label you a colour and guess what, you're out if I don't actually think you're the future of the organisation, which is disempowering, and that individual would need to have a personal sense of faith, positivity, and understand their own universe to be able to go and find other opportunities. And the key thing with that type of approach is it really does do harm to people's self-confidence and their own mental health to a degree, because it's a rejection. And if you've ever experienced rejection or abandonment or anything, it can really trigger those emotions, a redundancy or someone essentially not being chosen as part of the team. So you really need to be considerate of that, because remember, when we talk about change in my virtual change manager, like, this is about empathy, it's about consideration, it's about respect, it's about inclusiveness, and today it's about choice and framing choice. So I hope that this has given you an interesting reflection point on choice and change. And as I mentioned, a lot of the times there is no choice about whether people are going to be able to stop the change or not. And so choice more comes in how you communicate, especially if it's transformative. If it's a little process change, totally different. But it's just about, if you find someone struggling, reminding them they kind of have a choice about it. But you're not going to be able to have those conversations if you don't start with yourself first, saying, do I tend to always default on the negative? Do I really struggle around actually being positive? Why do I struggle with being positive? Because negative thoughts can be quite like Velcro, but I want positive thoughts to be more like Velcro. And I want to be able to see both sides of the coin, which is really important, so that I can give some reflection and then choose which one I want to focus on. But I can see both sides of the coin. Thanks for listening. And if you're wanting to upskill in change, we have a course coming up. So go to myvirtualchangemanager.com, sign up for the newsletter so you can hear more. There is a wait list for our Changing Projects course, which is a live training with limited seats coming up in July. We're kicking it off. So if you want to sign up for that so that you can be first to know about when the doors open for that to register and sign up, then go to myvirtualchangemanager.com and stay in touch. Thanks for listening. And if you're a long-term listener, thank you, with so much gratitude on my side, but also I hope I'm adding value to your change journey, change experience, and having you reflect upon your change a little bit differently, because that's what we're all about here at Next Level Change Success. And just remember that change matters, because people, purpose, and you matter.